Hi, everybody. Welcome to the D. Louise book series. It's nice to meet you. My name is Christina, K-R-S-T-I-N-A, K-R-I-S-T-I-N-A. This is where we read books and talk about books. No special effects going on here. Lighting is terrible, audio is terrible, everything's terrible, but I'm trying my best here. And every Friday, we recap Star Trek Next Generation. We did the Masterpiece Society. Today, we're doing Conundrum. Next week, Power Play. The week after, Ethics. And if you could, please hit the like and subscribe. I could use some more subscribers. I'd really appreciate it. Also, if you could check out my daily book reviews and the If the End episode later this afternoon. If you like this author, then maybe you like that author. We started out with the Bridgertons. If you like Julia Quinn's Bridgertons, then maybe you like Joanna Lindsay's Mallory's or Stephanie Lauren's Sinsters. And if anything needs to be made into a series, it's the Sinsters. They were awesome, absolutely awesome. You need to check those books out. And there's over 30 of them in the series. The main characters become supporting characters in future books. Each character, it's really awesome series. So anyways, today we are talking about Conundrum, Season 5, Disc 4, Episode 214. And I'm going to start right off up at, I don't like the episode, I don't like conspiracy type theories. I don't like stuff that's phony. It's just, ugh. I've got this thing. It's just, you can put any words you want in to finish that sentence. It's just great. It's just bad. It's just horrible. It's just. So that's my thing. It's just. Plus the fact that my keyboard is living on borrowed time. It's being held together by a data clip. So, and I have scratched my coffee table. I'm really upset now because the clip just sliced a line through my coffee table, and it was at my mom's. So it's a little sad. Oh well. All right, let's get going. So we start the episode off with Captain's Log Stardate 45494.2. We're investigating a series of subspace signals that may indicate intelligent light in the Epsilon Stellar System. We are within sensor range. We start the show off with Troy and Data in 10 forward, and they're playing a game of chess, which Troy ends up surprisingly winning to Data's surprise because he does the strategic move or whatever, the required move, and she turns the tables on him, and she plays it by intuition, and Data discovers that Troy has won the game with this single move, and he's just inspired by that. So as a result, if she won, he was required to make her a beverage, as only he knows how to make it, and that's what leads us to the other thing. So then the next scene is in sickbay, and Dr. Crusher is treating a girl that looks like she injured her arm. Crusher says, "Well, it looks like you tucked when you should have flattened out." Kristen says something like that. Crusher says, "Turn your head to the left," and she moves and it hurts. Some tearing of the ligaments, nothing we can't take care of. Kristen says, "Good." Crusher says, "If I remember correctly, the last time you graced my sickbay, you were diving off the cliffs of heaven on Sumiko 4, holodeck program 47C. Kristen says, "Same thing, only that time I flattened out when I should have tucked." Crusher says, "Well, as your doctor, I would like to recommend the Emerald Wading Pool in Cyrus 4. It's a lot safer." Then we have Ensign Rowe and Riker having a slight disagreement in the turbo lift. Riker says, "Navigators on this ship have been doing this flight handling assessments the same way for years, Ensign." Rowe says, "But I found a better way." And Riker calls for the bridge, and then he says, "Do you mind if we discuss changes in procedure before you make them?" Rose said, "If I had come to you in advance and asked you to do it my way, I might have said," and she says no, and he says yes. "Maybe the point is I didn't get the chance. The point is, with all due respect, Commander, you're trying to turn me into the idea of the model officer." If I'd known it was paper. Rules on the ship do not change just because Laren decides they do. Then we get to the bridge. So then Worf says, "We're picking up a subspace signal, Captain. Sensors indicate a small spacecraft ahead." LaForge said, "The configuration is unfamiliar. Nothing on our databases come close." Worf says, "Visual range." Picard says, "On screen." And then they see that thing. Picard says, "Analysis, Mr. Worf. No discernible armament reading one life form aboard. Hail the vessel." Worf says, "No response." "We're being scanned. It's not like any sensor I've ever seen. Shall we raid shields?" "No, let's begin with a show of good faith." "Sir, the scans are matching the frequency of our optical data. It should attempt to access our computer system." The forge scanning intensity has increased by 1,500%. Picard says, "Shields up." Okay, now I can't show this in video form because of all the copyrights, but it's a clear glass. Then Data taps the glass, and it changes all different colors before it becomes completely orange again. Data says, "One Samaritan sunset made in the traditional style." Data puts a glass of clear located in front of Diana. He taps it. It changes the color. It's beautiful. I hope you enjoy it. A green light passes across Data. I hope you enjoy it. And then we're back on the bridge. Oops, that was a mistake. I'm sorry. I froze there for a second. Worf says the scanning has penetrated our shield. LaForge says computers are going down. Picard says take evasive reaction. Rose says the helm is not responding. Then they're covered with this green. And then they're all like, what happened? What just happened? Who are we? Where are we? Picard says, "What happened?" LaForge says, "What the hell?" Riker says, "I don't know who any of you are." Picard says, "Nor do I. I don't even remember who I am." Now, when we come back from the introduction, this guy is suddenly there, and you're made to believe that he's part of the cast just because you didn't see him earlier. So LaForge says, "It looks like we're all on the same boat." Riker says, "Make that on the same starship." McDuff, "Who are we? What are we doing here? Who are you?" Ro, "It looks like I'm the pilot. We're not going anywhere now. The helm's dead." "But you still know how it works," Picard says. Rose says, "Yes." Riker says, "This console has tactical configuration." Worf says, "Yes, favorite power status, intruder scan, torpedo guidance, but that does not to be appear operable." Picard says, "Clearly we still possess certain skills. It would seem we know how to operate the ship, but our identities have somehow been erased or suppressed." Riker says, "We're on the bridge. That's a good chance this is our ship. It looks like you're the leader." And then Worf gets all huffy puffy, Worfy Klingon-y, because he's got all these fancy shiny decorations. He must be the leader. He's like, "Well, I'm decorated too." So, he starts to act like he's the captain. Picard says, "It seems to me that determining leadership is not crucial right now. We need to find out who we are and, well, what we're doing out here." Macduff comes, "But how did this happen? What did this to us?" Geordi says, "Better still, who did this to us?" I've got some intermittent sensor readings and the scans keep repeating itself like it's stuck. But it looks like there's a metallic debris right in front of us, distance 17 kilometers. Riker says the remains of another ship. Geordi says that's a good possibility. Riker says the remains of another ship. LaForge says that's a good possibility. Worf says perhaps we were engaged in battle. McDuff says if they stunned us with some type of bioelectrical field that could have wiped out our memories. Rose says then we fired back, destroyed them. But if that presumption is correct, then we could have sustained other damage. Computer status report. Riker says no voice interface. LaForge says no interface period. Hey, got something. I've accessed the basic system directories. Picard says, can we get a general status report? Geordi says life support systems throughout the ship are fully operational. Navigational propulsion offline. Rose says, what about communications? Geordi says completely disrupted. Rose says that leaves out a distress signal. Riker says we don't even know where to send it. Picard says we have an onboard communication system. Geordi says we do now. Picard says let's use it. The ship must have a crew. They may still have their memories. Rose said we should be careful what we say. There could be a boarding party somewhere on the ship. Worf says bridge to all personnel. Select a representative from your group to contact the bridge and report on your status. So then we're back in sickbay. Kristen says, well, that helps a lot. Crusher says, report on our status. I wonder if everyone else is in the same condition we are. And Kristen notices that her arm hurts, and then Dr. Crusher fixes it. And she's like, well, I guess I know what my position here is on the ship, even if she doesn't remember. And then Kristen asks for some clothing until she figures out who she is. I think it was convenient for McDuff that there was a Klingon on board, a Klingon who prefers to fight and be in battle and be, winners in battle. So I think that's one of the reasons why McDuff nursed Worf so much and hit his buttons little by little, influenced Worf's decisions microscopically and influence the other people's decisions. So we get back on the bridge, and McDuff says, we've heard from all decks there are over 1,000 people on board. Everyone's had their memories affected in the same way we have. Worf says, I have completed a survey of our tactical systems. We are equipped with 10 phaser banks, 250 torpedoes, and a high-capacity shield grid. McDuff says, we're a battleship, and he's trying to enforce it. Worf says it appears so. Riker and then Ro and Riker are talking, looking at the computer. So Ro says this turbo lift gives us access to the rest of the ship. Riker says that sounds like the next logical step. Start with the most crucial areas. Ro says main engineering deck 36. I'm on my way. Whoa! We've got to coordinate our efforts here first. Rose says, I just need to do something. Riker says, look, I feel the same way. We all do. But if anything's going to get done, I know. I really an ugly feeling. I don't like being so out of control. Riker says, well, we're going to have to depend on each other if we're going to get through this, okay? Rose says, okay. Riker says, we're going to search the ship. Worf says, very well, proceed. Well, LaForge says, I will go with you. I'm to get my hands on the computer core. See if we can reestablish control from there. So then we're down in engineering. Geordi says, I've accessed the optical data network from engineering core. I can monitor every system that's routed through here. Rose says, warp and impulse are readying within tolerance levels. So are the tactical arrays defense and offensive. Geordi says, everything looks functional now. If we could just access the control systems, we could get them up and running. Riker says, according to the schematics, the engineering core, computer core, accesses down that corridor. Rose says, weapons, propulsion, and shields are the priorities. We could be in danger of another attack. Geordi says, that's where we'll stop. Riker says, we'll begin our crew survey on decks 5 through 10. When you get those systems going, try to pull up the personnel files. It would be nice if we all had names. Right, good luck. Yeah, you too. And they go off. I think I had a technical glitch. Jody says, I've accessed the optical data network for engineering core. I can monitor every system that's routed through here. Rose says, warp and impulse drives are readying with tolerance levels, so are the tactical arrays, defense and offensive. Jody says, everything looks functional. Now, if we could just access the control systems, we could get them up and running. Riker says, according to the schematics, the engineering computer core is down that corridor. Weapons and propulsion and shields are priorities, Rose says. We could be in danger of another attack. Jody says, that's where I'll start. Riker says, we'll begin our crew survey on decks 5 through 10. When you get those systems going, try to pull up the personnel files. It would be nice if we all had names. Right, good luck. And they all start their search. Then they go into the captain's ready room, and Worf is sitting there. Picard says, so far, our survey team has found no death or injuries among the crew. Shuttlecraft are all operational, as are all the transporters. McDuff says, but no one they've talked to knows any more about the identities than we do. Worf says, engineering is working on accessing the control systems as soon as the ship is operational. We must make it combat ready. Now, see, this is good for McDuff because the Klingons like to be at war. They like to be ready for a good fight. They like death and honor. Or honor and death. Picard says, I would recommend that before we prepare for comment, we try to access the ship logs, find out who we are, what our purpose here might be. Worf says, I disagree. We must make ourselves ready for battle. That is the highest priority. Engineering to bridge. Worf says, go ahead. I've regained control of the navigation, propulsion, and weapons communications, Geordi says. Geordi says, we should be able to tie them into the bridge in just a few moments. Well done. Now we are ready. Picard says, ready for what? So then they fire a test shot, and they're like, well, that works. McDuff says, the phasers are operational. Worf says, now we have full tactical control. Picard says, we should run a complete diagnostic of all command systems. Picard says, if we're going to trust our lives to these systems, we should be certain they are not going to fail. McDuff says the computer was damaged. Some processors might still be down. Worf says, proceed with the diagnostic. So, I was wondering, if you're still watching, what if they have everybody's profile in the transporter thingy? They could beam everybody out and back in again with their old self, with their stuff from a week ago. Just saying. So the doctor comes in and says, Worf asks her what has she found, and she says, not much. The brain scans I've run are unusual, but there's no damage to the hippocampus. That suggests that we still have our long-term memories, but somehow they're being blocked. Picard says, is it possible to bypass the normal pathways to get at those memories some other way? Crusher says, that's what I'm hoping. What I need now is to see someone with normal brain scans for comparison. Is there any chance I can get crew medical files? Worf says, we are currently running on full diagnostic. Computer resources are limited. Picard says, the medical records are our next priority. Crusher says, thank you. So then Riker's been doing the door-to-door checking on people. And he says, I guess these are my quarters, but I don't remember anything. Riker says, if it's any comfort, we're all in the same situation, so stay put for now. We'll be back in touch. And he's like, okay, sir, thanks. So then Riker and Ro have a convo. Well, that is for the living quarters on this deck. What's next? Riker says, there's a large room up ahead called 10 forward. Let's go. See, so if everything were back to the way it was supposed to be, what do you think you'd be doing right now? Riker said, I'd be having more fun than searching the ship, I imagine. Rose says, fun? Well, that with that holodeck we just saw, I think we could conjure up an interesting program or two. Rose says, now that's disappointing. Riker says, why? You don't strike me as a man who needs a holodeck to have a good time. You would also think that some of the holodeck would have some of their memories in it too. I was just thinking that. So then they go into 10 forward, And Riker, who reported to the bridge from this group? Troy said, I did. Have you found anything that might give us some insight into what happened? Troy says, not specifically, but that there are two things that seem unusual. The bartender is an artificial life form. Data says, can I get you something, a beverage? Riker says, no, thank you. Rose says, I'm fine. Riker says, your memories are gone as well? He's right. Data says, the data banks that identify who I am are not functioning. Now, I want to know how, if these people, did they do any research on the Enterprise? How did they know data existed? Why was data's system affected? That he in the other couple of instances when something was done, data was not affected by what was done. They just sabotaged him in some way. So I'm surprised that this storyline subjected data, like he should be the one that actually remembers everything. But I guess because he's a computer and he's part of the ship, they decided to erase Data's memories too. Riker says to Troy, you were going to mention something else. Troy says, I don't know if it means anything, but I seem to have an ability that others don't. I have a strong sense of what other people are feeling at times. It's almost, is something wrong? No, just for a moment you seem familiar. Riker says, you remember me? Not exactly. I mean, don't know who you are, but there's something about you. Worf contacts a bridge to survey team. Riker says, survey team here. He goes, Worf says we have access to personnel files. Please report to the bridge. So they all go up to the bridge. So Geordi gets into the computer system. And Geordi says, computer, give me a biographical listing of all personnel responsible for primary operations of the ship. Computer says, a full biographical listing is not available. Geordi says, is there any listing of the ship's senior officers? Computer says, the crew's manifest is available. Geordi says, that's better than nothing. Give me the crew list. He identifies Commanding Officer Captain Jean-Luc Picard and shows pictures. Executive Commander Kieran McDuff, Second Officer Commander William Riker, Operations Officer Lieutenant Commander Data, Chief Medical Officer Dr. Beverly Crusher, Ship's Counselor Lieutenant Commander Deanna Troy, Chief Engineer Lieutenant Commander Geordi LaForge, Chief Security is Worf, Helm Officers Ensign Ro Laren. Commander McDuff is the only abnormality in that, but they don't know that. Commander McDuff has the other officers listed here report to the bridge. Aye, sir. Picard says your next priority will be to retrieve any information you can about this ship's mission. Contact the operations officer to assist you. Geordi says aye. Rose says he's in 10 forward waiting tables. Worf says, and then he has a little moment that he apologizes to the captain for assuming command. And Picard says, Worf, we're all doing the best we can in a difficult situation. Think nothing more of it. He says, thank you, Captain. So Geordi's giving a report in the observation lounge. Geordi says, we haven't finished a full search of the computer records, but we found out quite a bit. This vessel is called the Enterprise. We are part of an organization called the United Federation of Planets. The Federation is currently in a state of war. Troy says, with whom? Geordi says, the Lysian Alliance. They're a genocidal race determined to destroy us. The war has been going on for years. Data says Starfleet Command believes the Lysians are using a new weapon which has shifted the balance of power to their favor. Geordi says over the past 2 months, 14 Federation ships have been captured, apparently very easily. Their crews held captive on Lycia. Picard says, what do we know about this weapon? Data says our scientists theorize that Lysians are using an energy wave, either plasma-based or a subspace interference pattern. The weapon severely disrupts a starship's computer system as well as the mental functions of the crew. McDuff says, that's what happened to us. Picard says, Mr. LaForge, do we have any record of our current mission? Geordi says, yes, and he goes to the wall screen and he's pointing to all this stuff. Geordi says, we're approximately here. We've been ordered to cross into Lysian territory and destroy their central command. That is this, the nerve center for the entire Lysian military operation. Troy says, Captain, there's been a great deal of damage to our computer system. Maybe we're not getting the correct information. Picard says, what are you saying? That we get confirmation of this mission from our headquarters. Worf says, if we use subspace radio, we will be detected. Troy says, there could be thousands of lives at stake. LaForge says, our orders specifically require us to maintain radio silence. Data says, our mission is part of a highly coordinated effort to put an end to the war. There are other vessels on other fronts all working to an intricate plan. Geordi says, well, we're the linchpin to the operation. If we don't destroy the Central Command, the entire effort will fail. Worf said, he's right, Captain. Our choice is clear. Picard said, McCanderdorf set a course for the Lasilian Central Command. Riker takes Troy to her quarters. Do you recognize anything? It's like it belongs to someone else, she says. Nothing feels right. This room, this ship, most of all, this war we're fighting. Riker says, I don't imagine war ever feels right. Troy says, I suppose that's true. What is it? Troy says, that same feeling. You seem familiar. You're the only thing that does. Riker says, can you remember anything specific about us? Troy says, I don't know. It's more like remembering an emotion. Feelings that you're somehow associated with. Riker says, I hope they're good feelings. Troy says, yes, they are. This entire situation is a little unnerving. Riker says, it's been a long day. We've all been through a lot. Troy says, we certainly have. And she kisses him on the cheek. Aw, cute. And he says, I'll see you tomorrow. And then he goes to his quarters. And Ro is there. I know I didn't get the wrong room. Rose says, I just didn't like the way my quarters were decorated. Besides, I have this funny feeling that maybe I spend most of my off hours here. Riker says, really? Rose says, for all we know, you and I could be married. Riker says, for all I know, you and I could hate each other. Hint, hint, hint. Some sort of exciting, isn't it? We just don't know. Riker says, we might regret this. Regret what? Are you being a little presumptuous? Like I said, I just don't like the way my quarters were decorated. Riker says, maybe we should switch quarters. Rose says, maybe we should stay right here and see what happens. Riker says, what if I snore in my sleep? And Rose is like, she's all over him like a wet blanket. And he's like, what? She's like, what makes you think we're going to get any sleep? And she's the aggressor in this relationship. And I'm just like, oh, why? Why do the writers continue to do this to us? Why? We know that Troy and Riker belong together. We know that they were together before the series starts. And the writers continue to torture us the entire effing series run until the movie. And then they give us the conclusion that we've been waiting 9 years for, or 10 years for by that point. But still, they keep throwing other people at our Riker and Troy. And that's another thing. The whole reason that Riker and Troy are supposedly together is because they serve on the same crew and he's the ranking officer. Well, he's her ranking officer too. Wouldn't the same thing apply here too? That he's her ranking officer? So you're not supposed to that's why Carter and Jack O'Neill never got together. Well, they did, but they didn't because he was her superior officer. I mean, there's conflicting interest here. You're telling me this thing that Troy and Riker can't be together because he's the supporting officer, and you keep hammering that issue home, and then you do this. That's hypocritical of you, writers out there, to pull this stunt. I'm just saying. Then we're back on the bridge. Must be the next day. Captain, we have crossed the line, the Lasilian border. Picard says, take us out of warp. Ensign, go to 3/4 impulse. Yes, sir. Mr. Worf, maintain a continuous sensor sweep. Worf says, aye, sir. McDuff says, how long until we reach the Central Command? Data says, at our current speed, 37 hours. Worf says, Captain, I'm picking up a vessel directly ahead. Can you identify it, Mr. Data? Data says, the ship matches a Starfleet description of a Lasilian destroyer. A short-range attack vessel with disruptor-style weapons and a standard crew of 53. Within visual range, they put it on screen. Now, it's a similar ship to they encountered, or a similar ship that they thought they encountered. And they are an itty-bitty vessel, and Enterprise is superior to this vessel. And yet, with McDuff's influence and twisty, they kill 53 people because of Macduff and his twisty brain, and that he's influencing them. These people are better than that. They should not be falling for these tactics. Picard should use his common sense, his feelings. He should use his justification. But no, he falls to Macduff's influence, and I just don't like it. I don't like it a whole bunch, because Picard is no better. He doesn't have to be pushed into a hasty decision. And because he is pushed into a hasty decision, 53 people die. And other people die. Because Macduff pushed him into a hasty decision. And it's not fair. And Picard should know better than that. Just saying. Worf says the destroyer is increasing speed. They are moving to intercept. Picard says evasive maneuver sequence Delta. Rose says aye, sir. Worf says they are matching our maneuvers. Picard says activating phaser arrays. Ready to fire, sir. Picard says stand by. And Macduff gets in his thing. Captain, we were ordered to do this. We were ordered to kill them all. But he's like, I'm aware of this tactical analysis, Mr. Data. And Data's like, destroyer has minimal shields. They have a little disruptor. They're like no match for the Enterprise at all. And Picard says, open up a channel. Let's talk. But because Macduff is like, no, their new weapon erased our brains. We don't want to do that. And Troy says it's possible they just want to talk to us. And there's a whole bunch of back and forth. And eventually Picard falls to Macduff's influence, and they kill everybody on that ship. 53 people lost their lives because of Macduff's, and I just don't like it. I don't like it at all. I don't like it when our characters are forced into stuff that they do not agree with, and their character was forced into a split second. They could have opened up discussion. Picard would never do any of this stuff. He always talks first, and I hate that this is going against his core character. Just because he doesn't remember doesn't mean he has to go across against his core character. I'm just saying. So they're in the observation lodge. Worf says the Lassian Central Command would have received any transmission from the destroyer by now. Macduff says they're going to be on alert. Rose says I recommend a randomly vectored approach to our target. It would be our best chance of avoiding any sort of pursuit. Picard said agreed. Doctor, the success of this mission would be far more likely if we could get our memories back. Is there anything you can do? Crusher says I have found several cases resembling our condition in the medical index. Their causes are different, but the cure is similar in each case. Riker says, could the same treatment work for us? Crusher says, that's my hope. It involves increasing the activity of the medial temporal region of the brain, using short-term memory synapses to retrieve long-term memory. Picard says, when can we start? As soon as our medical files become available. It would be dangerous to attempt treatment without them. LaForge says, Mr. LaForge, Data and I ran into some trouble accessing the medical areas in the computer. But with a little time, I'm pretty sure we'll be able to get there. 3 hours. Picard says, proceed. So then we're back in engineering. Geordi's like, I don't get it. I'm still hitting a firewall. Data says there appears to be a command path continuity. I shall attempt to rewrite the locator subroutine. LaForge says, you must have been one hell of a bartender. It's too bad there aren't any more of you around. We could certainly use the help. Data says, yes. I wonder why you're the only one on board. Data says, I have expended considerable thought with my respect to my apparent uniqueness among the crew. Geordi says, any conclusion? Several possibilities suggest themselves. I may represent an entire race of artificial life forms. If so, there may be a home planet of others of my kind, a shared history and a culture of which I am not presently aware of. LaForge says, then again, you could have been built just for this ship. Data says, I've considered that possibility as well. It may also be the case that every starship on the Federation is equipped with an artificial life form like myself. Geordi says that if that's true, maybe you all look alike, a standard issue android. Hard to construct, so only one allowed per vessel. Data says there is another possibility. Perhaps my origin is unique, and in that case I am alone. With access to the information storage area, considerable damage has been done to the files themselves. I don't know why they just don't fix Data's brain. Why don't they try to do repair in his brain first? And Geordi has this information, but I guess he doesn't remember he has this information. But he could just restore data. They could restore data before anything else. Um, so they say that the crew records, the personal logs, and the medical logs have all been damaged. So then Riker spends some time going through his personal file and trying to figure out who he is. And then Troy comes in and she says, I'm restless. Mind if I visit for a while? Riker says, please, what's wrong? Troy says, every time I think about this war, our mission, I feel a sense of panic, like a hand closing around my throat. Riker says, you're never going to feel good about this war. None of us will. But we've got to complete our mission. I've been doing a little research, trying to find out about William T. Riker. What have you discovered? He's a musician, for one thing. And he picks up the trombone and he plays it a little bit. And Troy says, very impressive. Riker says, no one was more surprised than I. Troy says, so what else has your research uncovered about William Riker? He's athletically inclined, loves to climb mountains. He's from somewhere called Alaska. He enjoys exotic food and takes his vacations on a planet called Reiser. And then Troy picks up the book he has on his desk, and she opens it, and it says, to Will, all my love, Deanna. And Riker says, that may explain some of the familiar feelings we have. Troy says, I don't know what you think. And they start to kiss when the doorbell rings and Ro walks in. Now, he was just having emotional feelings about Diana. And then Ro walks in and assumes command and takes over. And then Troy leaves, and then Riker and Ro get together. And I just don't like it. I just don't like it. So Geordi's talking. What bothers me, Captain, is how specific this damage is. Any records of a personal nature, any files that could tell us about who we are, those are the ones that are gone. Riker says it's a little too selective to be coincidence. Crusher says as selective as what was done to our own memories. Skills still in place, but personal knowledge is unavailable. Macduff says it's consistent with what we know about the new Lysan weapon. Picard says, Doctor, is there absolutely necessary to see the medical files to attempt treatment? Crusher said it would be dangerous to attempt to do it without them. It's a risk I think we have to take. And then Macduff volunteers. Well, of course he volunteers because he's the one that does it. And then it doesn't work. And they're like, oh, I guess we have to go back to the drawing board because it didn't work on him. So I'm not going to talk about this scene again, but there's him in the machine with them trying to get it to work and things go wrong. But of course it's going to go wrong because he's the one that did it. Then we're back in Picard's ready room, and him and Macduff and Picard are talking. And because Macduff has switched places with Riker, he should be talking to Riker. He should not be talking to Macduff. Because if he was talking to Riker, this conversation would go so much differently. But because we have Macduff's influence here, it goes the wrong way. Picard says, yes, Commander, please come in, sit down. I find myself having grave concerns about our mission. Macduff says, concerns as to success? Picard says, no, more fundamental doubts whether or not it can be justified. Macduff says, I've been asking myself the same thing. I'm sure our superiors feel their orders are justified. Picard says, others we can't just even verify. Orders we can't ignore. Picard says, I also can't ignore that we have greatly outclassed the only enemy vessel we've encountered, and that every single possible shred of information which might have shed some light on this situation has been conveniently eliminated. I feel as though I've been handed a weapon, sent into a room, and told to shoot a stranger. Well, I need some moral context to justify that action, and I don't have it. I'm not content to simply obey orders. I need to know what I'm doing is right. And see, that's the point. That's my point. That is my point. Picard should be thinking. He should be talking first. Always talking, always talking, always talking, always talking. And Macduff is like, no, 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 no. Shoot first, shoot first, shoot first. So do I. I know a lot better about this if all the questions were answered. And if you want to abandon our mission until our memories return, that's your choice. But I must ask you, is it right to risk the prolonging war to allow the needless deaths of thousands on both sides solely on the basis of your moral discomfort? Yeah, yeah, it is. Because it's not going to happen. And it's just because you're influencing us. I'm not going to go over this completely, but Macduff calls Worf to his quarters and tries to convince Worf that this is a time for battle, to appeal to Worf's Klingon sensibilities and to encourage him that we are at war and we need to prepare for war and we are at battle. And Worf a little agrees with him or leans that way. And I don't like it at all. I just don't like it. So, Data says we are entering the Lycian system. Picard says slow to 1/4 impulse. Rose says yes, sir. Jeff says the central command is directly ahead, still beyond the weapon range. Picard says red alert, battle stations bring us to attack posture, Mr. Worf. Aye, sir. He doesn't even attempt to talk. He doesn't even listen to his own instincts. Macduff is like pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing. Should not let one person decide everything. You should not let him twisty turny. And I hate the plot line. I hate the plot line is letting him do this. I hate the fact that Picard is not using his brain and deciding, well, maybe we should talk. Maybe we should investigate this further. Why are they in such a hurry? Data says sensors show objects in our path. There are 29 meters in length and they are unmanned. So they're going to destroy an unmanned object that people may need. According to Starfleet records, their sentry programs to defend their central command. Riker says, I'm reading 47 of them around the perimeter. Picard says, tactical analysis. Pods are equipped with fusion-generated pulse lasers and minimal shielding. Riker says, not much power. Riker says, forward shields to maximum. Lock phasers on the sentry pods. Prepare to fire. Shields up. Phasers locked. They fire. They take them out in 10 seconds. That's not right. That's absolutely not right. They have no reason to go after these people. They don't even know if they've actually personally met these people. They do not. It's just the whole thing is just irritating as all hell. So they're in optimal fire range in 55 seconds. Macduff says phaser banks are ready, loading torpedoes. Picard says, what are the defensive capabilities of the Central Command? Data says armaments consist of 4 laser cannons, 39 cobalt function warheads with magnetic propulsion. Defensive shield output is 4.3 kilojoules. Riker says 1 full torpedo in order to do it. Data Troy says how many people on that station? Data says 15,300. We're within range, Captain. Picard says stand by, waiting your order. Troy says, Captain, this isn't right. The rest of the forces are depending upon us, Macduff says. Riker says, how can our mortal enemy be over 100 years behind us in weapon technology? Macduff says, their battleships may be on the right way right now. We must attack. Picard says, I do not fire on defenseless people. Mr. Worf, open a channel to the Lycians. Macduff says, belay that order. There's something wrong with Captain. I'm taking command of this vessel. And everybody fires on Macduff. Ah, shoot. So then we're in the captain's ready room. Captain's log supplemented. We are on course to Starbase 301. Dr. Crusher has been working steadily and restored the memories of most of the crew. Picard said the Lycians have identified Commander Macduff as a Cetarian, an alien race that's been at war with the Lycians for decades. We have conveyed our deepest sympathies to the Lycians over the tragedy of their lost ship and crew. Riker says, with all the power that Macduff had to alter our brain chemistry and manipulate the computers, it's hard to believe he needed the Enterprise. Picard says the Cetarians' weapon technology is no more advanced than the Lycians. 1 photon torpedo would have ended the war. Riker says it almost did. And then... So then our boy Riker has to face the music. He comes in and he sees that Troy and Ro have been comparing notes. And Riker comes in and says, well, I'm glad I ran into the two of you. When you have no memory of who you are or who anybody else is, you find yourself. Ro says, the council tells me that at times like that, we might do things that we've always wanted to do. Riker says, she said that? Troy says, it's psychologically valid. Rose says, Commander, don't worry about it. As far as I'm concerned, you and I have shared something that we will treasure forever. Ro leaves, and Riker sits down. I'm a little confused. Well, if you're still confused tomorrow, you know where my office is. And she walks out on him too and leaves him sitting at the table. So that's the end of Conundrum. I hope you enjoyed this little recap. I hope you are still here. So I hope you will join me next week for Power Play and the week after Ethics. And I hope you will stay tuned later on for If Then. Like I said, if you like the Bridgertons, you'll maybe like the Mallorys, Stephanie Lawrence Sinsters. Every week it's a different category. I did investigative reporters, I did homicide, I did forensics, and after I did both homicides and forensics, I found about 20 more that are just as good that I want to talk about. So probably do a forensics and a homicide part 2. So please check down that. Please hit the like and subscribe. Let me know I'm doing a good job. I appreciate it, and I hope you have a good day. It's a little rainy here today. Have a good one.